So the Chiefs had some surprising standouts today during practice, with multiple media members in attendance taking notice and even asking players about them. On top of that, said players actually gave them some high praise, which means the hype train is officially happening. So I've got to break all that down as I get into the biggest takeaways from today's practice, as well as press conferences from a plethora of players. But first, how about those? All right, so the first round of 3 waves of Phase 3 of OTAs concluded today, and this time media was allowed to attend, and there is a lot to get into. They were allowed to watch a portion of practice, report on that, and then a bunch of Chiefs players, including Patrick Mahomes, among others, and even Andy Reid himself spoke with the media today, so let's get into it. But before I break all that down, this is just a reminder that Phase 3 of the offseason program allows team drills to be ran. That includes 7-on-7, 9-on-7, and 11-on-11 drills, for example, but no live contact is allowed. Part of what the coaching staff is looking for during this time is individual skill of the players, yes, but also for their ability to retain the play calling and installs and function accordingly. Basically, can they remember what they learn and go out and do it quickly on the practice field? Things aren't as fast as they will be at training camp by any means, but it is ramping up, and Andy Reid clarified that players still move quick during these practices for sure, but he just mentioned that players are often moving around much more freely by the time training camp rolls around from a retention standpoint. A lot of this is on the players to study and get things down on their own time, because if they don't, the coaches are going to notice. However, he said for the most part, he can tell players on the 90-man roster this year have been putting in the work. Now, one of the more exciting things to watch is, of course, the wide receiver drills, and Xavier Worthy for sure looked the quickest of the lot, to absolutely nobody's surprise. Worthy is much more in sync with Mahomes this year compared to last, especially considering he spent a lot of last offseason dealing with a hamstring injury, so he was kind of thrown into the fire at training camp and was playing catch-up from that point on. He caught fire in the second half of the season, though, and he's using that as a stepping stone to build onto that this year. He had an awesome one-handed catch out there today as well. One of the plays of the day per the reports of the beat reporters in attendance, and part of that is helped by the fact that he knows the system well and can just fly around out there without even having to think. Mahomes said today that Worthy isn't just fast, but he can make plays, and part of his job is to give guys like that more opportunities down the field even when he's covered, because he sort of earned that right with the plays he's made, especially the back half of the season during his rookie year. Now, if we get back to that wide receiver drill real quick, you can see Juju Smith-Schuster out there also working along with Sky Moore, Nico Remigio, and even Tyquan Thornton. Sky Moore has put on a bit of weight. There's a photo of him being floated around looking a bit stockier, heavier, maybe in better shape, more solid. Okay, yeah, all of those, but I have no idea if he's actually going to make the roster. Just something worth noting. More on Sky in just a moment, because we first need to talk about Tyquan Thornton. He surprisingly was next on the pecking order during this wide receiver drill, even before the Chiefs' 4th-round draft pick in Jalen Royals. Royals reportedly had a standout day at practice, though, making what was labeled the play of the day, the official play of the day by Matt McMullen, as he made a strong leaping grab in the back of the end zone during 7s. Yes, please give me more. I want it on camera. Calm down, Cole. Now, Thornton also had a couple of deep snags downfield today as well, with both Patrick Mahomes and Xavier Worthy speaking highly of him today during their pressers. They both complimented his speed, and Worthy himself said that he feels like Tyquan Thornton even has a chance to get on this roster this year and make some plays. And if that wasn't enough, Nick Jacobs of KSHB41 said he really liked what he saw from Tyquan Thornton athletically and chemistry-wise with the quarterbacks he worked with today in team and 7-on-7. So there we go, a little underdog wide receiver hype leading into training camp. With that being said, though, 2 veteran wideouts were not present today, with those being Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice. Rice is reportedly under the weather, per the words of Andy Reid himself, so they are keeping him at home in an effort to not spread that around. He looked awesome out there in phase 2 of OTAs, though, just wasn't able to go this week in particular. Mahomes shared about Rashee Rice and said he's been working extremely hard and he has no limitations. He's out there making plays on the field, he looks explosive, is moving fast, and he thinks Rice can be one of the best wide receivers in the league. That was evident at the start of last season if you look at his production before his injury. So combine that with Hollywood Brown returning and Worthy back for year 2, and Patrick Mahomes thinks this is going to help the offense go out there and make a lot of plays happen. Mahomes was also asked about the wide receiver room in its entirety as well and what stands out, and he simply said, "They're fast." Worthy, Rice, Hollywood, Tyquan Thornton, as well as the newly drafted Jalen Royals. They have to get back to pushing the ball down the field if they want to open up guys underneath, and Mahomes shared that Coach Reid challenged him to make that a priority this offseason, get that deep ball honed in on, and then come back to the underneath stuff. The reason I like hearing that is because the Chiefs were one of the least explosive offenses in the NFL last year, both from a pass and run perspective. Injuries affected that a ton, as well as having Casper the Friendly Ghost out there at left tackle, but it's still something to work on and build upon for this year. And from here, I got to take a look at the O-line battles going on, because obviously that's going to play a role in the offense even being able to be more explosive, additional receiver notes, a look at the running back room, and more. But first, with the Chiefs' official 2025 NFL schedule now known, as well as every other team's schedule around the league, it's the perfect time to figure out which game you're going to go to and get some tickets. Well, that's where the sponsor of today's video, SeatGeek, comes right in. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is not only the #1 rated ticketing app, but there's more than 70,000 events listed on their website and app, including concerts, festivals, sporting events, and so much more. They make the process super easy for you as well, rating tickets on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Just look out for the green dots, because green means good, meanwhile red means bad. On top of that, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and you know I had to come through for you guys. You can use code HBTC10 for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. That's 10% off any tickets with promo code HBTC10. Make sure to click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you again, SeatGeek. All right, so Patrick Mahomes is back for year 9. Believe it or not, that's insane. Obviously, it's not his first rodeo, and he's glad he still has some vets around him on the team like Chris Jones and Travis Kelce. They all help set the standard. Mahomes said both Kelce and Chris Jones are future Hall of Famers after all, so when you see them out there working during voluntary workouts, the young guys see that, take note, and build upon it. Kelce wasn't there today, just FYI, but he has been around, though Chris Jones was out there and working. Mahomes then spoke a bit more about Kelce, saying that if this is the last ride for him, you would never know it. The way he talks about football, the way he's working and striving to be even better this year compared to last, he's far from tired of the job, and it seems like he's feeling even better physically right now than he was last offseason at this time. So that's some great news, and having Kelce with a bit more pep in his step, along with the return of a healthy Rashee Rice, is going to feed families all year long. I can't wait for football, guys. And then let's talk about some more wide receivers. Big Red was asked about a couple guys on the bubble, with those being Justin Ross and Sky Moore. Let's go Justin Ross first. Andy Reid said as long as he stays healthy and is out there, that's a plus. That's a little confusing to me, though, because Justin Ross hasn't really battled with injuries in recent years from what I can recall. I mean, he did miss the entire 2022 season, then dealt with a 6-game suspension in 2023. In 2024, he didn't make the 53-man roster, spending basically the entire season on the practice squad. However, Andy Reid said that you could argue he had one of the best camps last year. It's just a matter of keeping him upright and trying to work him in with that mix of guys. He's a big-bodied receiver with real good hands and has done a nice job for them over the years. We will see what becomes of Justin Ross, but he's got an uphill battle to make this roster, that's for sure, as does the Chiefs' former second-round pick in Sky Moore. I talked about him earlier, saying he's gained a little bit of weight. I mean, he dealt with a core muscle injury, so that's probably good for him to have a little bit more muscle mass on there, but I still think Sky has an uphill battle to make this roster, and also probably would be best suited to land on the practice squad. With that said, though, Mahomes complimented Sky's work ethic, saying he's one of the hardest working guys on the football field, and his job is to go out there and bring his best work on the field this offseason. Big Red was also asked about Sky, but his entire answer basically cut out during the Chiefs live stream, so didn't really get much from it. What I was able to hear was basically something along the lines of he's doing a good job getting back into the swing of things after having to spend a lot of the season on IR last year. He needed surgery, core muscle injury, it needed surgery, and he was out the rest of the year. He's done a good job, though, with what they've asked him to do so far. They just need to get him out there with the defense going against him. Again, I think he ends up on KC's practice squad this year unless injuries hit the room or they roll with 7 wide receivers and he passes up somebody like Tyquan Thornton or even the UDFA Elijah Badger. But the coaching staff really like Sky a lot, so it's not impossible he ends up making the 53. On the subject of the defense, though, while I shared there were some players missing earlier on in this video, the voice of the Chiefs himself, Mitch Holthus, reported that all 43 defensive players on the 90-man roster were out there in attendance and working in some capacity. Harold Kuntz of Fox 4 reported that cornerback Christian Fulton was present, but not participating in individual drills, watching closely instead, so maybe he's nursing a little bit of an injury. I'm not overly concerned about that at this point in time. Now, another cornerback seen out there working was their third-round pick in the ball hawk, Noel Williams. But get this, he was also working on kick returns, and it's worth mentioning because he was the only one seen out there working on kick returns in a white jersey, meaning he was the only defender. Noel returned kicks in college, though, so it's not a huge surprise to see they're at least working him into the mix to see what he's got. Another defender in defensive end, George Karlaftis, is excited for the newly added draft picks, defensive tackle Omar Norman-Lott, as well as defensive end Ashton Gelati, a guy he's actually trained with multiple times in the last couple of off seasons. Iron sharpens iron after all, so the more competition in that room, the better. He's been working with Tamba Hali again this offseason, doing all he can to help take his game to the next level. He's grateful the Chiefs picked up his fifth-year option, so we know that George Karlaftis should be around all of this year and at least all of next. But when asked about his future with the Chiefs, he just kind of said, we'll let his agent and the team work out any contract-related stuff, but he would love to play in KC as long as humanly possible. ESPN recently named Karlaftis as one of the league's most underrated players in the NFL because when you look at his pressures and sacks over the last 2 seasons, there's pretty good reason for this. But when George was asked about it, he said he doesn't really care about any of that stuff. He's only interested in making sure he's living up to the expectations of those inside the building, from his teammates and then, of course, to his D-line coach, Joe Cullen. Before I get to the Chiefs running back room, because there's a couple interesting notes there, one position group benefiting going up against KC's talented defensive line come training camp is, of course, going to be their offensive line, and there's quite a bit of battles going on there. We're going to be watching that left side very closely, with Jalen Moore being added in free agency, and then Josh Simmons, of course, being drafted in the first round. Mahomes shared that Simmons is doing all the right things, working hard, and every time he sees him, that's what he's doing. He's grinding, trying to get back out there on the field as quickly as possible. Veach and those guys brought in a lot of competition, doing a great job with that. And then Andy Reid kind of echoed Mahomes' thoughts about Simmons, and then actually said he's looking better than expected. He's been doing individual drills only so far, but Andy said that Simmons could end up getting some work in team period by the end of phase 3. They didn't expect that per se, with Coach Reid adding it really means he's just farther ahead in his rehab than they thought he would be, which is great news. If he doesn't work in during team periods here soon, Andy said he felt very confident that Simmons would do so during training camp for sure. Now, another position we're all going to be watching closely, right next to the left tackle spot, of course, is the left guard spot. Joe Thuney is now gone after being traded away to Chicago and signing a well-deserved extension with them. That leaves 2 main candidates right now fighting for that left guard spot in Kingsley Suamataia and Mike Caliendo. Those will be the 2 primaries. They're going to duke it out. Andy let everybody know, though, that Kingsley is doing a nice job so far at that spot. They moved him to the left guard position during the second Denver game and liked what they saw enough to keep that trend going. He knows the system and can play fast, which also helps. Now, if I had to put money on it, I would say Kingsley is given the nod as the starter to start things out, but we'll just see how it all plays out. I wouldn't even mind the team bringing in an interior veteran offensive lineman that ends up getting cut from another team's 90-man roster come August. Next up, a look at the running back room is pretty interesting, at least in regards to a couple of players. Isaiah Pacheco clearly put on a little bit of weight, but Andy Reid called it good weight after leaning down a bit last year, and he's doing a good job, actually saying Pacheco looks tremendous right now. Pacheco said the weight gain was intentional, and he's looking to have a much more productive season this year compared to last. Obviously, he spent most of last year injured, but he feels great physically and is very happy with how things are going. The running back room is phenomenal, and they are only going to make each other better. Another running back in that room is, of course, the veteran Kareem Hunt, and he looks like he's lost a little bit of weight. You can see him here walking up the steps, noticeably trimmed down, and really that can only mean good things for him, as in theory it should help him with his speed at least a little bit. He was great at making people miss last year, but noticeably lacked explosiveness. And that could be because he had really no offseason preparing and getting ready. He was signed off his couch week 2, week 3, and then played catch up the rest of the year. Well, he will now have a full offseason under his belt, full training camp, preseason, all of it, which again, he had none of last year, so this is only good news here for Kareem Hunt. And then later in the day, Pete Sweeney of Arrowhead Pride had some interesting takeaways from practice himself, dropping an awesome thread. He does this every single year for training camp, OTA, so he's definitely worth the follow on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. But he mentioned that they didn't see 6 players in total, and one of them is pretty intriguing. We already knew about Hollywood Brown and Rice, Travis Kelce. Ethan Driscoll wasn't there, Jawan Taylor, and Trey Smith. The only notable one outside of the couple we've talked about is Trey Smith, with him on the franchise tag and hoping to work out a long-term deal. Could that be somewhat related? Maybe. I'm not going to read too much into it because, again, it's voluntary, and the vets, people, like, they don't have to be there, okay? You have to be there for mandatory minicamp in June. That's the most important. Next up, Christian Fulton. I mentioned he was there. Josh Simmons, they were both around but limited, but I did not share that Jared Wiley was in attendance. He was seen wearing a sleeve on the leg that he had the ACL repaired on, but he was there and in attendance, so that's some good news there for him. Then a couple more standouts. Wide receiver Nico Remigio high-pointed a pass from Gardner Minshew. This is the guy I probably have as like wide receiver 6 on the roster, and he makes it as a depth piece on offense, but then also as the team's punt returner. Outside of that, I liked this update from Jalen Watson, or about Jalen Watson. He showed good coverage going up against wide receiver Jason Brownlee, and he's just worth mentioning because Jalen Watson was one of the guys injured, coming off of injury, and did not look quite himself at the end of last year. So there you go. You guys got to let me know your thoughts on today's practice. Who are some of your favorite standouts? Who are you most intrigued to keep eyes on? Let me know all that in the comments down below, and until next time, let's go. Let's freaking go. How about those?